This week, we welcome Chris Carter, CEO at Approyo, to discuss how to minimize SAP migration challenges. In the leadership and communication section, where cybersecurity maturity meets confidence in C-suite and board leadership, has CISO become the least desirable role in business? Maybe. How radical transparency is revolutionizing leadership, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps. Just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step towards total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker today. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 404, recorded July 14th, 2025. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me, I have all my co-hosts for this one this week, which is awesome, because I've missed them all. I was gone for a couple weeks. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Good to see you, Jason.
Hey, Matt, the band is all here. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Good deal. Not a lot of NFL news, but in world football news, Chelsea just won the World FIFA Cup, the Club Cup, which is really good. So Chelsea's been one of my favorite football teams from Premier League. So that was a good weekend. And my Red Sox just won 10 in a row, and they're creeping on those Yankees, man. So I can't complain.
Yeah, even after you traded away one of your best players,
I know,
you're
right?
still somehow winning. Yeah, that worked out.
Maybe that was the reason.
Maybe. Also joining me, Mr. Ben Carr, who hopefully is staying dry because we've been having a lot of rain down here in Texas.
Trying to, still getting killed. It's kind of crazy, just the amount of precipitation we're getting. So, yeah, glad to be here with you, and glad to have you back, Matt.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Summer Fowler. Welcome, Summer. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks. It's so good to be back. I'm excited to hear about Chris's Milwaukee Sports Geek activities from a while ago, so that will fit right in. But I do want to say that I am thinking about all of the victims of floods. My hometown in West Virginia was really hit rough. I know North Carolina and, of course, Texas and lots of places. So hopefully everybody is safe and staying dry.
Yes, I do as well. All right. Since 2011, Chris has worked with companies in over 55 different industries, is one of the top SAP experts in the world. His advice has been featured in various publications around the world. That experience allows him to help SAP run companies achieve faster, stronger, more stable environments. Chris, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. And I'm sorry, I'm a Fulham guy, Jason. Gotta love my Fulham.
There you go.
There you go. All right. So we're going to talk SAP. And I think I want to start with this migration requirement from SAP.
Yes.
Give us a little bit of the background on this topic a little bit and why we're having this conversation.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, you probably saw my eyes roll back a little bit on that one because unfortunately, SAP has mandated every single one of their customers, all 438,000 of them, must go to their new S4, which is their business suite, is actually on a cloud in some way, shape, or form, some type of a hyperscaler. So it's Azure or AWS or GCP, and it's mandatory. And they have to do this by 2027. Unless you have a very difficult and a unique landscape, then you get out to 2030. But it is their version of moving everybody to the cloud and mandating all customers to be a cloud-ready environment. And you've got customers that are just not happy about it. You've got others that have already jumped on and who have already done it. And those are great. Love playing up in the cloud. So we're trying to figure out how to balance that with each other. SAP is trying to figure out how to balance that with each organization. And it's a mandatory activity. You must do it. And if you fight them, you're either going to go to some type of a third party that's going to host you out there till 2040 now, according to one. But you're really going to lose all your innovation. You don't get any of the AI that's built in. You don't get any of the tools that's built in. You don't get any of the ability with the cloud. So SAP has really put it to organizations. You either do it or you're going to see dollar bills, an extra 20% on your maintenance fee.
So the first question I have to ask is how many people are looking to move away from SAP? Like if they're being forced to migrate from their existing environment, and we'll get into some of the complexities about that in a second, because SAP is notorious for multiple versions that aren't compatible with each other, right? In itself. Yeah. But if you're forcing me to move to S4 in the cloud, am I looking to just move to a whole different provider? Do they potentially lose clients through this transition?
That is a great question, Matt, because truly you could. SAP could lose some of these organizations. The problem with that capability is because they've built so many unique, and we call them Z codes, you've got so much modification on these systems. Moving from an SAP environment to, let's say, an Oracle or an Oracle Workday or a ServiceNow Workday, you still have all that complexity over here that you have to move to this new. Now, the S4 is a complete platform change. So you're still going to have to make changes. But the nice thing with that S4 migration is there are tools that are built not only from SAP, but from other organizations that will allow you to streamline that process. There's not that streamlining process going to an Oracle or something. So there are companies that are looking at it, but I only know of two, and the reason they're doing that is they are throwing away the baby in the bathwater. They literally threw everything away. Jason's laughing like I was laughing.
I'm laughing because I served as an enterprise CIO, and the running joke as a CIO is that ERP migrations is the kiss of death. Right? When you go from one ERP to another, it's a career limiting move. You never want to do that, right? You don't want to take that risk or that challenge. No. My question is, from a security perspective, so many CISOs aren't even involved in the decision-making process, right? Whether it's, do we migrate away? Do we stay with this current version? Do we go up to the cloud? Do we take that whole legacy, kick us out to, 2030 or 2040 or whatever the case may be?
You're right.
We're not part of those decisions, right? So many times with CISOs, it's, here's the choice we made, now secure us. Here's the choice we made, now eliminate the risk. Are you seeing that with some clients where CISOs are kind of on the tail end of the decision?
And before you answer, Chris, before you answer, I want to jump in on that with Jason, because that's certainly true. Like I think we see that a lot. But then also, like even if you're brought in, like this is getting into those areas of IT where, frustratingly enough, sometimes like the decision seems bigger than the CISO in security. It's like we don't even care what you have to say, because to the previous point we talked about migrating off. It's such a bear, and SAP is such a big organization. It's kind of like, just get out of our way, right? Do you? I want to just tie that into Jason's question. Do you see that as well?
So first, I'm going to answer. Well, actually, I'm going to answer in both. We actually have a project management document that we talk about as part of our assessment. Is the CISO involved with your decision making? And it's something that we had not even had that 5 years ago when we were just doing standard ECC6 upgrades. We didn't care. Now, since it's a platform change, we ask them to be involved with it. Do you even have a CISO? There are so many of these SAP companies that have the CIO is making the same decision, but they're not even involved and don't know the security activities. And right now, we've had so many updates on the SAP security side of it. It's been crazy. There's been hacks. The GUI's been hacked. The back end has been hacked. So literally every day we've gotten 1 to 2 different patches that we've had to do. And then to bring this back to your point, Ben, bringing those CISOs in, they're not necessarily making the decision about going SAP or Oracle, but they need to be involved because securing that ERP platform is critical, especially with all these hacks and attacks that SAP has been getting over the last literally the last 6 months. I used to have hair. I used to look as beautiful as summer. Now, look at me. I'm Ben and Matt. I'm bald because of all of the attacks that we have been having, and they have literally changed the dynamic with all those attacks on there. And so a CISO must be involved. And that's why we changed our profile when we do these assessments for organizations on going to the new platform. I need your CISO involved to know what changes, because remember, these guys and gals are going from a bare metal or virtualized environment. Now they're going to a cloud-based world. And these people don't understand the differences from the security, what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And so we have to literally lay it out there as if it's a cake on a plate and help spoon feed it for them.
So Chris, do you see some of those C-level executives that you bring that question to the table? Do they have an aha moment? Do they look at you and say, well, why? Because security is usually a roadblock? Like, what's the reaction when you say, this is mandatory and you have to bring a CISO to the table?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I was literally in Washington, D.C. this past week, and I had a meeting with a company, and I said, okay, well, who's your CIO? Who's this? Who's it? And then when I CISO, they gave me this. 2 people looked at each other like, what?
Who's that?
I said, who's your chief security officer? Why do they need to be involved with this? I said, well, and then we started going through the litany of, and they literally had that aha moment, like,
yep.
Oh, and I started laying out the changes, and our team started discussing what was going to happen and how it was going to happen. And they went from that aha moment to, holy cow, please get Chad in here immediately. We need to have him as part of this discussion.
Yeah.
He wasn't even invited.
Yeah.
So
it's just amazing
absolutely.
to see that initial visceral reaction to, you want to invite the CISO. What do you mean? What do you mean you want to invite the CISO?
We'll deal with that in about 6 months when we have to secure this platform.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the complexity of this migration is part of it too. It's not necessarily 100% cloud. There are, my understanding is there are options where certain tools can still be running on-prem. So the complexity of this thing and securing the communication between the main core platform and the cloud and on-prem different tools, like,
doesn't that sound like fun for everyone?
Oh, it does.
Oh, it's so wonderful. And it is, because only the core of SAP, so the accounts payables, accounts receivables, the main core components of SAP go up here in this beautiful little cloud. Everything else, you can decide if you want it in a cloud, in the same matching cloud, if you want Azure, if you want it in, hey, I've got a team in wherever that they're certified in AWS. We're just going to do the API connections between this cloud and that cloud. We're going to keep it on bare metal, or we're going to keep it in our data center. And what gets it even worse is you've got third-party tools. We've got 1,700 third-party tools in the SAP partner portal, and literally half of them are not even certified for S4 yet. So the tool that you're going to use today for your tax purposes, or maybe your distribution or your Zebra scanners, they might not even work with your S4 yet. And so you have to figure out, oh my God, do I need to use a new tool? Do I need to buy a new tool? How am I going to secure it? Where am I going to secure it? All those questions come in. And that's why Jason's question and Ben's question was so important. That's why the CISO needs to be involved, to be able to understand what those tools are going to do, how they're going to go up there, and what they're going to, how you're going to make sure that is secured between the two transactions.
Chris, I have a question about just as you know, SAP is selling this, well, they're not selling it, they're forcing it. What's the average cost to an organization? I mean, I know this is going to be based on size and everything, but how is the return on investment also explained? Yeah, I mean, I see it.
Yeah, it's literally, it is The team in DC, we started talking about the landscape that they have, and they have a very large landscape. It's $1 million plus for them. Now I've got other clients that are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, 5 and 6, 7 plus. I've got one customer that it was literally a $9 to $11 million deal. The problem is with some of that is you've got a couple components involved with that. You've got a partner such as Approyo that wants to help and make sure that you're getting it on time, on budget, and it's going to be secured and it's going to be utilized in the manner that you need. Well, then you've got other entities, and I'll say entities because you've got SAP, you've got the cloud partner, infrastructure, you've got everything that you got to do from a third-party perspective. All of a sudden, costs start creeping up because of timelines. You got these infamous, and I do mean infamous, vacation times in Europe. And unfortunately, you can only use one company, and that's the company that owns the licenses, to be able to implement on their cloud. So if you're on SAP, you're going to have SAP implemented on their cloud. Somebody takes a 7-week vacation. Yeah. A 7-week vacation just started last Monday for one of our clients that we're moving forward. They don't have a backup, and now we're the ones holding the bag on that. So you've got timelines that get chunked. It's unfortunate because right now, SAP has in their contract a 99.999 responsibility. Well, Gartner came out literally 2 months ago and said right now they're at 99.5. So right out of the chute, we're having to deal with the fact that they're in violation of their contracts. So we're trying to help better that. But at the end of the day, Summer, you've got this cost that rises. It wasn't Gartner. It was another CIO. No, it was DSAG, the German SAP user group, came out and talked about how literally 67% of all migrations are literally failing by 40% on the timelines that are talked about. A 40+% add on to their time. And then they're talking about the cost, and that all adds up. But yet we all have to do it. Now, I drink the SAP Kool-Aid. I have since 1989. I get it. I love the tool. I've done well with the tool. I know how to run the tool. But I don't understand why they don't put people in charge of certain activities that are going to be involved day to day to day. I get it. Everybody needs vacations. My wife asks me to take a vacation. I think my last vacation was 1989. But that being said, when you're doing this and mandating it for a customer, that mandating activity should be put together and said, I'm mandating it. I'm going to have the people and the functionality in place to make this happen in the timeline that we agree to. And so we do that, but unfortunately, we've got other entities that aren't doing that. And that's where it comes from, Summer.
So our listeners are security executives, right? The people who watch the show and listen to this are security executives. So let's talk about being proactive. Yeah. What can a CISO do to connect, knowing that they're on SAP and that they're going to, eventually have to deal with this problem? What can they do to start pushing to get that seat at the table early? What are the conversations they can be having? What are some golden nuggets you can give them to say, start communicating these particular things to your CEO, your CFO, your colleagues within the C-suite?
The first person you need to go to is, if you're the CISO, go to the individual who's going to be running that SAP project. It's typically a CIO. A lot of times it's a CFO because they don't have a CIO, CTO. Go to those individuals and talk to them about the ramifications of, if I'm not involved, this could happen to us. And oh, by the way, it's happening in the SAP ecosystem now. I'm here to bring you information and knowledge. I'm not going to take over your project. I don't want to take over and every CISO that's listening to this, please tell them, you do not want to take over this project. Because you do not want to take over this project. Yeah, exactly.
Not it.
Knows it. Not it. You're just here to try to help make their life easier, because I've been doing this research. I've been proactive on these activities. I'm following what's going on. If we're going to choose, whatever the hyperscalers, Azure, AWS, GCP, talk to them about I know the security profiles of this Azure environment or this environment. These are the things we're going to, and it's a must activity between SAP's version of it and our tenant, because you're going to connect those tenants. And from a security standpoint, you must have those activities locked out. So talk to them about how we're going to do this and help with the project. Once those are established, they're going to understand, hey, he or she really understands what we're thinking about, how this is going to go. Talk to them about how it's going to save our timeline, because if I get involved with this at the end, that's too late. They've already established the protocols for me, and we have to retrofit those protocols from SAP into our environment. And that's much more difficult. That's why I made reference earlier. We set out about having the CISO and the security discussion up front, because the protocols that SAP mandates are a little bit more difficult to get into your tenant as an organization. So you start out there, you work with them on that, and you build those security profiles, because your security roles inside of SAP for your users are now based upon SAP's roles and responsibilities, not what you had in the old legacy environment. So start that early, start that process, start getting those users ready for it, and you're going to see a much different environment. And then secondary, tell that security individual needs to tell them, hey, we need organizational change management, because what we did here in ECC6 is different than what we're going to do up here in S4 Business Suite. And because of that, they're no longer going to have a GUI. They're now going to have a web portal with tiles. They call them Fiori tiles. And those tiles have a different layout and security as well. So now you've already proactively given them that help that's going to speed up the process by weeks and months to move that project forward.
And that's before you even, I mean, there's still some decision points around on-prem and cloud connectivity, et cetera. I mean, those all have to be, but if you start early, you can start having those conversations early, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
We're what, mid 2025. So people have roughly 17 months left. Yeah.
Approximately a year and a half. Yes, sir.
Yeah. To get this done.
And that's nothing when it comes to a major ERP migration.
No, typically we're telling everybody expect a minimum of 1 year for your process.
Right.
And if you're not ready, the problem SAP ecosystem has is if you look at our consultative rate, individuals that are working at customers, ourselves who are consulting firms, we are a gray beard organization. 57% of all SAP consultants are 45 plus years old. And if they don't want to work in the new environment, they're leaving our ecosystem. So all of a sudden you've got that knowledge transfer of the security that was there. What were my user profiles? How are my user profiles built? They don't want to be a part of that project. Now you've got to bring in new people, or you've got to bring somebody into your project team. That just extends your timeline. And if you've got 16 months left to do this, I'm sorry, my team doesn't know your security profiles. We're going to have to learn it. We don't know what your team has been building, how they're building. It's going to take us longer to do that. And that's why the CISO is so important. That's why security and that organizational change management around the security is so important for anything within the SAP ecosystem right now.
So when you talk your 12-month timeline, that's migration time, not necessarily planning time?
That is not assessment time. That is not assessment and planning time. That assessment and planning time, we plan 2 months just for the assessment and planning time, because we will run software that'll tell us the Z codes. We'll talk what can and can't be. By that period of time, within that 2 months, we will already know your environment. Is it going to be Azure, AWS, GCP, or is it going to be one of the cloud data center peaks? What are we going to do? What tools you have? Because we'll then know what tools you have. And as I made reference earlier, if your tool is not ready for the S4 Business Suite on Azure, but it's only available for AWS, are you going to replace it? Is that company going to change and have it ready for you within 3 months when we're ready for it to be there. And so those pieces of the puzzle come into play. And it, as Jason made reference earlier, the security pieces that are flying off the shelves at SAP for these updates, you might have to update something on your ECC6 environment before you even send some of that data. And then we get into these companies, and we all know security from a data perspective. If your data is old and you've got old disparaged databases all over your environment, I've got a client that literally buys 17 plus companies every single year, and they've got all these databases. Think about some of the old JD Edwards and some of the old Siebels and some of the old SQL databases that they haven't updated, that those security patches are just, you're begging them, God, I need this before I can do this. It's going to be garbage in, it's going to be garbage out. And that's a huge security risk right there.
So minimum 14 months. Minimum. And yes. We're almost at the 17-month mark. So folks, if you're listening right now and you have SAP, let's hope they've started the process.
I mean,
this is going to be
think about this, guys, right? How we talk about CISOs, showing their business acumen. If it hasn't come up, bring it up. You be the catalyst for this change. You be the catalyst for this business innovation. We're always talking about flexing our business acumen and our muscle there. Go do it. Be the leader. Lead the conversation.
Amen.
Yeah, otherwise this thing can come and bite you pretty fast.
That's right.
It does. Yes.
Yeah. Ben, Summer, Jason, any additional questions for Chris while we have him?
Good to go on my side.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you all. Thank you for bringing it. It is such an important topic. And I can't thank you enough for bringing up the security side of an SAP migration. It is so vitally important for everybody. Of these 438,000 companies that are out there, it is massively important for it. So thank you for caring about it.
Yeah, thank you for the topic. It was a great discussion. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, guys and gals.
All right, now let's get into this week's articles. So I got a good set here again for us this week, Jason. I love article number 2 is kind of a fun one. But I'm going to start with the Deloitte article, where cybersecurity maturity meets confidence in C-suite and board leadership. This was an interesting survey, right? So they went out to 1,200 companies or something like that, and this is an annual survey. The survey last year talked about, because I pulled it up, about the rising influence of the CISO. This was kind of an additional one, but it's a correlation between high cyber maturity and level of confidence in leadership. There's a correlation of that,
it's funny because I read it and I started to laugh, and basically I put the equation together and I said, okay, 1,200 cyber decision makers were surveyed. And the epiphany moment was the more engaged the C-level is in cybersecurity and the executives are in cybersecurity, and the more mature the organization is, the more confident those cyber decision makers are in those leaders. Of course.
I know.
Yes. Why? They're getting the support they need. They're getting the influence they should have. They're getting the budget and the resources they should have in most cases, right? So that's not an epiphany moment for me. If every CISO had that level of support, we'd all be more confident in the decision makers in our organization.
I felt like you hit the nail on the head with this. I felt the exact same way. And I was thinking there were so many other groups that could have been surveyed with the same question. Like you could go to a board and say to the board, how confident are you in this leadership team at the management and executives at the company? And balance that against cybersecurity. That would tell me a lot more.
Right. If you go to any executive within the C-suite and they have the support and the resources and the influence, of course they're going to be more confident in the decision makers there. I mean, this is a softball.
Yeah, but here's the really interesting number. So high cyber maturity was 163 out of 1,196. That's less than 14%. Right. So that stat by itself ought to say something really interesting. Like, so of the 1,200 companies, only less than 14% believe they have a high cyber maturity.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other correlation point, so Summer, this will make your heart warm. The high cyber maturity organizations are also more likely to be attuned to potential risks related to Gen AI. So that number is also less than 14%, by the way, if you use that same correlation. So lots of confidence all around.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, this one was a softball. I'm with Jason. This was lobbing it up there.
Oh yeah.
The one thing I took out of this article, which I thought was a little interesting, is there were some interesting stats around AI risks. That again, we've talked about this from a risk management perspective, and they identified 4 common risks that people ought to try to address. And I took this away for part of my day job, right? Because we've started to get asked about, questions around AI frameworks and are there specific risks to AI that aren't modeled in traditional cyber attacks? And so you could start to build some custom risk models here around this. But the 4 that I thought were interesting is just for people's own kind of help here. Challenges in developing effective controls related to AI human collaboration, lack of explainability in Gen AI outputs, information integrity stemming from Gen AI algorithms, and data poisoning. Those are the common 4 across a big swath. But again, less than 14% of the company, so the sample size isn't very big. Right.
Yeah. And it makes sense, though, that if the company has a mature model for cybersecurity, they're likely going to turn that also with AI, right? I mean, it's going to be that success begets success. Mm-hmm. And so it's no surprise. But I'm with you. I actually have those 4 written down as well as the items to say, all right, these are the things that we have to make sure we're covering with our customers as we write AI.
Yeah, it's almost, for me, it's almost an exercise to look at the mitigating controls to potentially mitigate these risks. Anyways, I might do some fun little modeling on the other side. If I come up with anything good, I'll share it back somewhere for you. So
yeah, great.
Yeah. And so in this first article is the link to last year's survey. Again, it's only a reference point because we're going to talk about this actually in Article 3, rising strategic role of the CISO. So their previous report talked about the rising strategic role of CISO. Article number 3 is going to talk about whether the CISO role is desirable anymore. So just hang tight, folks. But there's a good contrast right there. Article 2, CISO's Guide to Creating a Cybersecurity Board Report. I always pull these in because I'm always interested in your all feedback on, is this article worthwhile or not?
Yeah, I mean, as I look through this entire article, one of the key points that I didn't see called out at all was alignment to strategic goals or strategic initiatives of the company. Like that was nowhere in this article. And there also wasn't any reference to KPIs for how the security team is adding value to the company.
Right.
I love the fact that they brought in, cyber risk overview and making sure that you're bringing in key risk metrics and making sure you're risk focused, right? Risk management focused. I love that. But what about business alignment? What about business enablement, right? All the things we talk about on this show that are important as well to make sure that we're aligned at the level we should be aligned at.
So I always tell other CISOs that when you're talking to your board, there are 3 things that you want to come out of this. 1, you want everyone to agree on the risks as aligned to your business objectives. So there it is, Jason. You've got to, and everybody should agree. Yep. It doesn't mean that you agree 1, 2, 3, 4, but you agree in alignment with each other. Not precision, but just direction. You have to also show that you are a good steward of the resources that you've been given. So that talks about some of the KPIs. And then you have to have their confidence. Yep. Those are the 3 things. They have to know that you are the person that can guide them through thick and thin. And if you can get those 3 things, I think you're nailing it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I like those 3 things, Summer. I think for me, it felt like this was written from interviewing a bunch of CISOs who have kind of heard the talk and are like regurgitating the same stuff we've all heard before. And it goes back to that first article, like interview some board members. Like I want to know what they're not getting that they want. And then I would love to see that aligned with the first article and match that up against maturity to understand like this is the ask you're going to get from a low maturity board, right? That doesn't understand it. And here's how you take that and you morph that in to get that board up to a higher level of maturity. Like that's the value for me, right? Like where do you take it? How do you grow the program? Not what we all know about, board reporting. I completely agree with you, but Jason, but just saying like everybody throws that more line of business, right? Like, yeah, we know that. Like, yes, that's true. But what does that mean to a board member? What do they want to see? How do they want to contextualize the data? What are they getting that just falls flat for them? Like,
to your point, Ben, one of the notes I took here is know your audience, which means build a relationship with the board and know what type of information you should be sending their way, right? What are their wants and needs? That should be included as well, right? What's the information that matters to them?
And to that point exactly, like one of the things somebody taught me early on is when you're looking at reporting to the board, if the first time the board is seeing the information in your board report, you have failed.
Yes.
You better have one or two people on the board who you're strongly aligned with, who you can go to and prep and say, like, this is what I'm thinking about presenting to the board next week.
100%.
Like, what do you think about it? What's your feedback? And like, get that feedback because they have many more conversations with the board than you do, and they know what's going to resonate. And if you're fostering that relationship, your success is going to be much greater.
Yep.
The one area here, I didn't, these KRI and KPI metrics, right? We did a Say Easy Do Hard segment on this, but back in April timeframe. They list out like phishing success rates, intrusion attempts, vulnerability patching timelines. Like, are those really the metrics you want to be sharing at the board level?
That's where
like,
you lose
they're
the board.
not.
You lose the board
right?
at vulnerability management conversations and phishing exercise conversations, and that's when you start to lose them.
Yeah,
they
it's more
don't
about
have the context to understand it. It's not in their sphere of reference.
Right. Yeah, that's why you got to be a little more risk focused here. And when I saw those listed out, I'm like, yeah, you missed the point here. Like you talk about it as a business risk, but then the metrics you lay out aren't really reinforcing that. You're getting into the weeds, in my opinion. So
Absolutely.
That's the data. That's the underlying data that like burdens your hypothesis, the risk statement you're making to the board, right? Like, yeah, if somebody wants to dig down and be like, why is that so? You have that, but you're not sharing that information generally. It's a different set.
And I think if you can agree on those top risks, if you say, where cybersecurity is in the big enterprise of risks, then you go one level down and say, here are our biggest cybersecurity risks, and directionally, am I moving towards addressing those like planned? That's what the board wants to see.
Right.
That's what the others on your team want to see. They don't want to know your vulnerability patch rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they want you to make recommendations on, where should I be making investments to mitigate that risk and get agreement around that. Like if CISOs could walk in, right, knowing that ransomware is trending high, but they also know how to potentially mitigate it and they know what it's going to cost them, and that puts them in a much better position with the board to actually get the budgets to actually go do some of those projects, doesn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
That's a challenge. All right, now article number 3. Has CISO become the least desirable role in business?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's gut check everything we've talked about for the last, couple of years. Regulatory change, pace of business and innovation change, threat landscape, personal liability. Hello, personal liability. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we've seen the folks that are doing the exodus to become vCISOs and consultants, right? I mean, we talk about that on the show. Yeah, people don't want that risk. They don't want the personal risk. They don't want that personal liability. And burnout is a thing. We know that.
Yeah, true.
So the one thing that I found, and I really want to talk about this, and I know that it's at the very end of the article, and it's something that, they talk about, which was they talk about the fact that your organization is more important than your tools, but then they also talk about a structured way of professionalizing the CISO, profession. And there were all these different things like a CISO credential, a cyber guild like the American Bankers Association, board ready registry, insurance consortiums. What do you guys think about this? Like, where do you think we should, or should we even go in that direction?
I mean, the first thing I thought of was, let's take technology as a whole. And technology as a whole doesn't have the equivalent of a CPA type organization or anything like that, right? Like, we just don't have it. So the odds of
but it's a bit different though, isn't it, Jason? So I'm Summer.
I know Ben has a point on this one.
No, yeah, I'm in this fun. I've been saying this for a long time. Like, I've been saying that we need to do this, right? And I know the Professional Association of CISOs just like came out of the gate and is trying to do some of this stuff. To Jason, to your point, like, yeah, you're right. Technology doesn't really have it, but it's a bit different, right? The twist I have it on is there's an ethical dilemma about some of this stuff, and there's a code of ethics that needs to be established around what we need to do and how we need to be perceived. It's a little bit different than IT, right? It's more akin to the legal profession, right? Or financials, where there's a fiduciary responsibility there, right? I think if you're not doing the right things from a security side, it's a little bit different than if you decided to go in a different direction from an IT side just because you didn't like the way the tech stacked out, right? But if you don't implement MFA and you get popped, like, that's a mistake. Like, that's something you should have done.
Yeah, I mean, I can argue both sides. So, number one, step back, clarify. I believe we should have something like this. My point is highly unlikely that it's going to happen in a meaningful, structured way.
Well, I mean, let's think about
everybody
that.
together like CPAs are today, right? Like,
so yeah, CPAs, but you have exams. Think about like dentists and attorneys. They have special schools that they go to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then they become a part of this. So this goes all the way back to, do we need CISO schools, and is that even practical?
Right.
I mean, and then otherwise, if we don't have a level of education that comes with that, we're going to get all of these associations and nobody's going to know what to join.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It does need to shake itself out, right? But I think there's got to be something, right? There's got to be something to kind of hold companies to, because again, I don't think a lot of other C-level execs understand the kind of the problem set and what I'll use the term best practice, but kind of in a loose, small b, small p way, what the best practice is and what they should be adhering to, right? And I think if there was a thing of being able to stand up as a CISO and say, look, we just can't do this because it's not the best practice. And if you're going to tell me you don't want to do it, there's a liability and ethical problem I have with that. And I kind of have to walk away from that. And if I walk away as a public company, that's not really going to reflect good on you as a company. Like, that's, I think, where we need to get to. But I agree. How do you get everybody on board? How do you get everybody to subscribe, to adhere to it?
I mean, just think about the fiefdoms that exist in our industry already. You have ISO 27001. You have NIST who wants to run the table, right? I mean, you have EC Council who's trying to do their own thing on the EC Council side, right? I mean, there's just so many fiefdoms happening right now.
Well, then you have all their membership bodies, ISSA, ISACA, ISC squared, right?
Exactly.
Like, right.
Yes.
And look, I'm going to make this point, Summer. CPAs still created Enron.
Yeah.
So the certification by itself isn't necessarily the silver bullet either.
Right.
Right? Because you had CPAs that were cooking the books anyways. Right? So I'm not sure that just having a certification for the CISO changes necessarily this trajectory either. It took Sarbanes-Oxley to put skin in the game for the CFOs to not do this, but the CPA certification by itself didn't necessarily stop, somebody from cooking books. Right. So
I guess the question is, who should own the accountability and responsibility for putting this together? Right? I mean, we can talk about it and we can look at it, but who's actually going to take this on? Is it Business Security Weekly? I mean, I guess we could do it in our free time.
Well, for a hot minute, we thought the federal government was going to take it on, but looks like that.
Nope.
That's not going to happen. There are groups, though, right? So, like, you brought up like ISACA and stuff, right? I don't think they're necessarily doing what we're asking for, right? But there are there are a number of CISOs that have gotten together. The most recent one I know of, like I said, is Professional Association of CISOs, where they're trying to do this, right? There's some liability coverage they're trying to put into it, code of ethics. It's not the Bar Association, but that's the closest analogy I can make, right? Yeah, I don't think we're going to have people going to get, a PhD equivalent in security, and that being the essence of where we're going. Yeah. But I do think people are seeing the vacuum or the need and trying to address it. As to who's successful with it or whether that shakes out, yeah, that's a big open question.
Yeah, that's great.
Time will tell.
That's it.
I know Ben's looked at this one before, so I knew Ben was going to have some opinions here. Yep. All right, next article, why your security team feels stuck. 75 tools, anybody?
Right. 75, man, you got a light program.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day.
I heard something like 420 the other day, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Really?
That's crazy.
Yeah, large organization, 420 tools. I was
crazy.
Like, that's insane.
But yeah, I mean, it's systems, it's process, it's the bureaucracy of the organization, it's who owns what, who's responsible for what, right? But, but then there's the culture and the burnout piece. So I split this into two places. Places that CISOs can influence and be successful, and then others that are more of the long ball, that are the say easy, do hard kind of things, right? Systems, process, bureaucracy, they can go out there and they can do things like lean business process management. Go out there and find where there are inefficiencies in the organization, right? Consolidate systems, be the catalyst for systems consolidation, and have the ecosystem approach that I've been talking about for years now. Build RACI charts, work with the C-levels to say, here's who's responsible, here's who's accountable, here's going to be who's going to be consulted, and here's who's going to be informed. Start building that out. That's something you can affect quickly. Culture, that's a long haul, that's a journey, that's a marathon. You have to do it, right? And then handling the burnout piece is part of it too. You have to change the culture, you have to change the habits, right? And you have to start thinking about your staff and making sure you're taking care of them and taking care of yourself. Because we talk about this all the time. If you're burned out, you cannot take care of your staff. So there's two different pieces here. There's a short ball and a long ball. You can handle the short ball really, really quick, have some good effect on the organization, and show your business acumen.
And this is where it's really important that you also are working with your team one. So if you're a CISO, working with that head of IT, CIO, whoever it is,
partnership. Because
I'll tell you, in my team, I have enterprise cybersecurity and IT, and I still have friction between the two teams.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my fault because I have to lay it out and fix it. And we're working on it. I mean, I say there's healthy friction when it results in something that's better for the organization. And then there's the unhealthy friction that's like, everybody's battling. And that's a leadership thing. Yep. And so I highly encourage, if you have cyber and IT, work that. If you don't, it's your job to start building that relationship and building, that trust and that communication at your level so that your teams see that as well. It's the culture.
Yeah. And that ties into the next article, right? I did this one on purpose on the friction side because it then transitions in how CISOs are training the next generation of cyber leaders, right? Because to your point, Jason, the long ball, right? The long game of this is how do we then create the next set of leaders as we become better leaders managing through this, right? And so that's why I kind of put these in this order.
Yeah. I love the article, and then it's got to be a military thing, right? Because there was the comment from the U.S. Army officer that said, "I look forward to the day where somebody fills my shoes." You're successful when you work yourself out of a job. How often, Matt, have you heard me say, "My job is to teach you how to put me out of a job"? That's my job as a leader, right? That is my job, because once I do that, I'm off to my next bigger, better thing. That is leadership in a nutshell right there, right? To be a mentor, to lead them to success, teach them to put you out of a job. Teach them everything you know. Don't hoard information. Don't be that person, right?
Right.
Make everyone on your team successful, and make sure you drive a culture that they're doing the same thing downstream to everyone on your team.
That's just not the self-care added. That's the self-awareness side of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Because if you're going to you want to coach, You want to be in there coaching that next group of leaders to come up. In order to do that, you have to be aware of your own behavior and how it may hinder that. This is something that is very, very big and hot on my mind, because I've done a lot of the coaching training this year. We have a really good transformation program at my company in building, new leaders. And my thing is I will make statements when there's supposed to be questions. And I tell my team, right. I say, listen, guys, when I say this, I want you to challenge me. And sometimes I'll catch myself and I'll say it and I'll say, that was supposed to be a question, not a statement. So let me try again. And I think that self-awareness, we have to grasp that to get our next generation of leaders.
100%. Yeah. I mean, nurturing that next level, having those pathways for them to be able to excel upstream, but then spotting the aces in the crowd too. That's a huge one, right? Figuring out where the highest level of leadership resides and then taking those folks onto that even next level, right? Where they eventually could be a colleague, a peer to you in the organization. That's, I love that. I love that.
So let me ask you a question about this, because one of my, and I'm really interested in hearing your philosophies on this. One of my strategies as a leader is always to fill my team with people who strengthen my weaknesses, right?
Yep.
So I have someone on the team who is exceedingly detail oriented. There's like those gaps that they fill for me. Then the coaching comes in for, I guess, filling their gaps. So how do you guys think about that? Because you build a team to fill those gaps, and I think it's a great thing because you have a super strong team. But then it's a matter of, okay, how do you really say, I'm ready to go and this person's ready to step in?
Yeah, I mean,
how are you helping them fill that?
That is the key, right? I mean, again, it's knowing intimately the professional development that those staff members want to. Who do you want to be when you grow up, right? Where do you want to be in this organization? And then guide them through that process and help strengthen the places where you found they're not as strong. You brought them to the team with a set of skills that you needed, but now you have to go sharpen the rest of the tools to get them to that next level. That's the philosophy I've always taken.
I've always tried to encourage them to do what I did, to say, find your weaknesses and fill your team with those strengths. So it's sort of like a generational gap of strengths.
Yep.
But you also, as a mentor coach, want to also help fill those gaps for them as well. Right. Yeah. They could, Summer, in this particular case, also go higher to fill those gaps. But it also behooves us as leaders to help mentor and coach them in those weaknesses that also bring them up, because then it puts them on the trajectory to replace you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the growth that they need, right? Is the gap that they don't have.
Yep.
Because as Chris said on the previous segment of this, right, a bunch of us are graybeards. We're not going to be here forever. So we want to build up that next.
I'll tell you, succession planning is an epidemic these days. Not a lot of organizations are really good at it. Yeah, there are so many organizations that I've worked with where one person leaves, they get a new job, something, and then operations crawl. Their operations begin to crawl because they didn't have a succession plan. And it was, hey, Debbie over there ran this entire thing. She had all the knowledge in the world. Nobody else knows how to do it. That's not good.
Yeah, a lot of organizations don't do that. I'd say it actually takes a fairly decently sized or well-matured organization to actually have succession planning. I've worked for organizations before where it's actually been documented. This is the person that's, if I get hit by a bus, here's the next person. We do that several levels down. But it doesn't hurt you just because your company doesn't have that. You should be thinking about that. Who's the person that's going to replace you as a CISO?
Exactly.
Your director of attack surf management. Who's their person on their team that's going to replace them if something happens? And you should have those discussions. And that makes, again, aligning with the business and being able to present that back and say, hey, I've got a well thought out succession plan here that goes 2 or 3 levels deep.
That's right.
That positions you as a good leader.
I have these conversations with my leaders all the time. Who's your lieutenant? Who's your lieutenant's lieutenant? Right? Yep. And now talk to me about how that goes down the stack.
And you want to see those people, like just like you want to be bringing your seconds and your people of who you want to bring up. You want to bring them into those other meetings with your leadership teams, right? And highlighting them.
Yep.
You should be seeing those same people having discussions with you, and it shouldn't always be the same cadre of 3 or 4 people.
That's right.
And that's your echo chamber.
Yep.
Right.
So I will tell you, from a formal standpoint, one of the things I've done with my team this year is from our objectives. A big team objective is invest in our people. One of the key results under that is that every single person on the team will complete an operational readiness plan that includes, these are the key things that I do, the key tools that I access. So not the projects you're working on, but just your everyday job. What are the things that you do, key meetings that I have, and if I'm out for 3 months, here's who would take over my job.
Yep, that's great.
And it could be multiple people, but it's going to be documented by every person in the organization.
Yeah, that's great.
And so we're really leaning into that as something that's really important.
There you go. Built-in succession planning. Just document your job.
Yeah.
And identify who potentially could take it over if
Yeah.
something happened to you.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, I was in Italy for 2 weeks. Somebody had to take over writing requirements. Team did great when I was gone. All right, they're all good. Last article, how radical transparency is revolutionizing leadership. We talk about this one all the time, but I love it. He broke it down into transparency creates trust, accountability, and innovation.
Yeah. So I want to bring up one point because you know me, words matter. Words matter. And using the term radical for me is probably the wrong term because that shows a level of extremism and inability to be flexible. And as a leader, I'll tell you right now, there are places where you cannot be transparent, where being fully transparent would create chaos or uncertainty in the moment because some things haven't played out yet. It could undermine employee satisfaction or trust. So to be radical about this is the wrong way to do it. To be balanced about it, absolutely. Do you want to be honest? Do you want to be authentic? Do you want to be open? Do you want to create trust, be accountable, innovate? Of course, 100%. But there are times when you have to keep that inner circle tight and the knowledge in the inner circle tight. Otherwise, it could create absolute chaos within your organization. And it doesn't benefit the employees long term. It just does not. Again, it's the long ball. The balance. You have to have balance in this. And radical is just too extreme for me. You can't be radical about it.
Yeah, I think when I read it, I was thinking of it as more of, it's this kind of more radical concept of being transparent where a lot of people have been very secretive, right? But I hear your point. There is a balance to this because there are certain things you can't be 100% transparent.
That's right.
Around rifts, other types of investments,
acquisitions, things like that.
Acquisitions, etc. Yeah, right.
And I think that's a place where you have to, as a leader, build that trust and be able to say there are some things that we cannot be transparent about, and you just admit it,
100%.
and you say, you know, build that trust with them so that they understand. You're not trying to pretend like there aren't things that you can't share. In fact, you're being very intentional about what you do share so that you don't create that chaos.
That's right.
Because things may change.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very fair way of approaching it, to say, yeah, this is something we can't talk about right now.
Yep.
Perfect. In my transparency, thank you for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have all of you join me. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.